Hello everyone. We are back again with another exciting topic. This week we will talk about FAGA, the Trillion Dollar Club. We have divided this episode into three sections. First, I will cover how massive FAGA is and look into the origins and disruptions of digital advertising giants Facebook and Google. Surya Pratap will talk about the e-commerce mammoth Amazon and world's largest technology company Apple's growth to success. Finally, Anurag will talk about the FAGA DNA and what sets them apart from different organizations. He will also talk about companies that have the potential of becoming the upcoming FAGAs of our age. Before we go into the details of each of the big four, I would like to present some statistics to put the massiveness of FAGA in perspective. Facebook has more monthly active users than the populations of the two most populated countries, China and India combined. Amazon made more than 3.5 billion deliveries last year, which is even greater than the 2.5 billion deliveries of the shipping giant FedEx. The US Postal Department handles 173 million posts every day, whereas 30 billion Gmails are sent per day in the US. Apple's net worth of $2.08 trillion is greater than the GDP of most of the countries. To sum up the power of FAGA, I would like to show the graph on the right. The 2020 net worth of FAGA combined was around 21% of the US GDP, which is predicted to increase to 28% in 2021. After seeing how big the FAGA is, let us look into each one of them in detail. Facebook, as we all know, was founded by Mark Zuckerberg in 2004 and was initially called the Facebook.com. The initial website was restricted to Harvard University, where people could look up someone from the university or from their class. In 2005, the website was soon opened for US universities like Stanford, Columbia, MIT, New York University, etc., and also selected corporations like Apple and Microsoft. It was in 2006 that the website was open for public. At the time Facebook was open to public, MySpace, which was owned by the News Corporation, was the biggest social media platform with more than 25 million users. MySpace leadership was more focused on building a marketing platform over a social media platform, which was very different from Facebook's vision. The difference in management styles combined with Facebook's fast delivery and updates made it the largest social media platform in 2008 with more than 100 million users. The company has truly changed the way we interact or get to know about people or events. A shift towards digital marketing in the recent past makes Facebook's customer data on several platforms invaluable. There can be potentially millions of people one can target on these platforms for any kind of thinkable product or idea. The company has an annual revenue of more than $20 billion, with most of that coming from advertisements. In 2016, Mark Zuckerberg presented the 10-year Facebook roadmap, which clearly shows that Facebook has a strategy to explore e-payment, advanced technologies such as AI vision, natural language processing, and augmented and virtual reality-based advertisements. Facebook's acquisition of platforms such as WhatsApp and Instagram, virtual reality headset company Oculus, and investment in Indian telecommunication giant Jio shows that Facebook is really putting into action what it stated in this 10-year roadmap. After Facebook, let's talk about another digital advertising giant, Google. Like Facebook, Google was also started when the founders were in college in 1996. The PageRank algorithm developed by founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin was and still is the core of Google search. The reason Google users intended to stick to the platform was the technical superiority of their search engine, which gave more useful and relevant results to a user query as compared to other competitors such as Yahoo, Excite, Lycos, etc. Also, Google decided to prioritize user experience over monetization. When conventional search engines were filled with advertisements, Google web page did not have and still does not have even a single ad. Earlier search engines did not allow users to redirect to their search results when they clicked on a web link. However, Google users were redirected to their intended web page, resulting in a better user experience. In my opinion, Google still aims at prioritizing user experience. Like the Google search, Other products such as Gmail, Google Drive, Meet, YouTube are all available for free and provide a very decent user experience and are genuinely very useful in our day-to-day life. Digital advertising accounts for 67% of total advertisement in the US, and Google covers nearly 29% of this market. Google and Facebook combined have a 54% market share and are truly revolutionizing the way advertisement is done. The pay-as-you-go strategy gives smaller businesses a fair opportunity to reach out to customers, which was very challenging in the age of magazines and billboard advertising. After talking about giants in the digital advertising industry, I would like to request Surya Pratap to talk about the other two companies of Faga Group, Amazon and Apple.
Thank you, Jayavardhan, for your insights into Facebook and Google. These companies have truly revolutionized the digital marketing space from an era of madmen to an era of digital technology-led marketing and promotions. Now let us look at Amazon and Apple. To understand the scale of Amazon and Apple, we need to understand the retail space of US economy. US economy's retail trade is around $5.4 trillion annually. Now, 5 to 7% of this trade is conducted via e-commerce, that is on the online platforms. And Amazon captures 50% of the market space of e-commerce. If we look at Amazon's market capitalization, it's around $1.7 trillion today. Amazon's market cap is greater than the other bigwigs of retail space in US like Walmart, Costco, CVS, and Target. They combined make around $1 trillion in market capitalization compared to Amazon's $1.7 trillion in market capitalization. To put this into perspective, Russia's GDP is around $1.4 to $1.7 trillion. So Amazon, which is around 2 decades old, has now reached a space where it is comparable to one of the superpowers' GDPs. Let's look at the growth of Amazon and other retail players in this sector of US. Amazon in 2010 was valued at only $50 billion, but today it's valued at $1.7 trillion. That is a growth of 2,830%. Walmart was a $180 billion business in 2010, but it is still a $340 billion business. And rest of the combined players do not even accumulate to near Amazon and Walmart. Looking at Amazon's success, Walmart has also now decided to get into the e-retail space. Recently, Walmart acquired Jet.com to boost its online sales, as well as the pandemic has helped Amazon a lot in this manner. Amazon was able to add a market capitalization of $600 billion in 2020 alone, compared to other players who could garner around $300 or $200 billion increment. But we have to understand, where does this $386 billion revenue of Amazon comes from? Well, 50% of this revenue comes from its online sales. The things that we purchase on Amazon, the app and the website, our books, kitchenware, home appliances, everything. That accounts for around 50% of its sales. The third-party services that Amazon's e-platform, the Amazon app offers, where third-party vendors are able to sell their products on this platform, results to about around $63 billion in revenue. That is around 20%. Now, Amazon is a technology company at its core. So it understands that it has to be a technology player as well. So it is now offering the cloud services via Amazon Web Services. It's garnering a 12% revenue, but most analysts predict that this will be a major chunk of Amazon's revenue in the future. Amazon, by these businesses, is giving a hard run to its competitors. In retail space, it's giving a hard run to Walmart. In the web services space, it is giving a hard run for their money to Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure. And in the third-party seller space, it is a tough nut to crack when it comes to eBay and Etsy. Other businesses that Amazon offers is now that it's already entering the fintech, the financial technology business, via its collaborations with credit and debit card companies. Now, Amazon understands that parents going to department stores to buy their weekly or monthly needs goods is a ritual that families have. Amazon is owning the Whole Foods Market stores now. Amazon is also entering the book space, the physical book space. as an avid reader, I know that I like to go to a physical bookshop once in a while and go through the books, touch them, feel them. So Amazon, with its Amazon Books, is entering the physical bookstore market and is giving a tough competition to one of the world's biggest bookshop owners, that is Barnes and Noble. Amazon understands that if you want to enter the customer's minds, you also need to enter the cultural milieu of a country or a society. By this, it has started the Prime Video service, which is engaging us viewers in wonderful content like Mirzapur and Fleabag. To understand the scale of Amazon, let us look at another statistic. Only 53% of American households voted in the 2018 election, and only 30% own a gun, where owning a gun in America is quite easy. But on the other hand, 82% of American households have an Amazon Prime membership. Amazon, with its Prime product, is able to give you lightning fast deliveries as well as make you stick with the product by using its wonderful content that is providing on Amazon Prime Video. Now, in recent years, Amazon and Apple have entered Hollywood. They understand the cultural milieu of the society, and also they understand the NPS score and how to read it. NPS score is nothing but a consumer's emotional connection to a company. NPS score of a company which is only in e-commerce and internet-based services is quite low or sometimes in the negative territory. Whereas for a company which is providing streaming video on demand, it's positive. Hence, when I watch Mirzapur, I will stick to Prime and buy my next books or my next mobile appliance from Amazon. That's how it's making you stick. Apple is also entering this market with a wonderful recent show called The Morning Show, which earned a Primetime Emmy last year. If we look at Amazon and Apple in the media business sector, they have together been able to put a value addition of $1 trillion in only the first half of 2020. Whereas the other older players in this media and entertainment industry have been able to together garner around $600 billion in increased valuations. Definitely, Amazon and Apple are now giving Disney, AT&T, Netflix, and Comcast a run for their money. An interesting parameter to judge how a media company is performing is to look at how much money they are spending per award. We are here looking at a content amount spent per Emmy. Emmy is a very prestigious award in the US television circuit. HBO, which has brought to us wonderful content like The Sopranos and recently the Game of Thrones, spends only $74 million per Emmy, whereas Amazon spends around $400 million per Emmy, and Netflix more than that, around $500 million. So this is a point which Amazon also needs to observe and study, where they need to make it more efficient to bring quality content to viewers. Now let us look at Apple, the great technological giant, which was the first company in the modern economy to crack the $1 trillion valuation in 2018. Apple definitely started as a computer company, which made wonderful individualized and personalized computers called the Apple Mac. But now it has transformed to a company which is making and delivering mobile phone and mobile phone services. The iPhone has been a groundbreaking, revolutionizing product in the mobile phone space. But Apple also understands, like Amazon, that it needs to expand into various other businesses now. Here comes in the Apple TV, which gave us the morning show, the iTunes, which has revolutionized the music industry and saved music industry from collapse because of piracy. Also, Amazon has entered the fintech market via Apple has entered the fintech via the Apple Pay. So the company as Apple, with a $265 billion revenue, has completely transformed from being a computer-only company to a company which makes groundbreaking, revolutionized mobile phones, to giving various services, and also to bringing in new products which already existed in the market but did not have a name. What I mean is, we have been wearing wristwatches for hundreds of years, but Apple brought it as a wearable device of computing, where Apple smartwatch is now able to trace not only our health, but even our communication, mails, messages, etc. Apple has also brought in the AirPods, which has attracted customers to its ingenious inventions and discoveries in the technology space, and makes you want to buy that product because it is so groundbreaking. To look at the scale of Apple, we need to see that Apple has a 21% market share in the mobile space. The next player is near Samsung, is at only 16%. One interesting thing to note here, guys, is that Apple is the only Western or the American company in these top 5 players, whereas 4 out of these five are Asian. And a note of warning to all Indians is that 3 out of these big 5 players are Chinese owned. This is also a clarion call to our policymakers to make sure that Indian mobile phone companies enter this space and are able to get into the top 5, top 10 of these companies. It's also a good idea with Atmanirbhar scheme running at full pace now and picking up momentum, that the production link incentive scheme for mobile phone manufacturing in India needs to work right and work quick. Let us understand what is the algorithm of Amazon and Apple to have become such big mammoths in their sectors. The first point that they understood was that they need to innovate. Amazon understood that I need to provide goods cheap and quick to the customers. The warehouse model of delivery of Amazon today is studied as a case study in one of the best business schools of in America as well as India. Apple also understood that quality should be their niche. They should make such wonderful products that other companies should use their quality of their products as benchmarks. And this is what Apple did with its iPhone. Today, in general parlance, it's common to hear, oh, look at this company's phone camera. It is as good as iPhone. Oh, look at this company's phone body. It is as good as Apple's diamond cut body. The second parameter that these guys understood was that of obfuscation. What it means is they understood that it's easier to defend a market rather than creating one. So Amazon uses its monopolistic position to safeguard its market share. How does it do that? Recently, Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post, one of the most read newspapers in USA. Definitely, they're not going to talk any bad about Amazon and create a negative marketing space for it. In recent media reports, we were also able to see that many of the news organizations were literally reading a scripted view of Amazon, that how Amazon is not an exploitative company and that it does a lot for their employees. But from the ex-employees, we have heard that, oh, the warehouse working conditions are just terrible and it's inhumane. Other way to obfuscate case was to be learned from Apple. They've made wonderful promotional videos. In one of the videos, they showed Jesus, Gandhi, and Steve Jobs in a sequence. This shows that, okay, we are so good that we are able to put our people, our directors, and promote them as being greats as earlier like Jesus and Gandhi. The third aspect that they understood was how to exploit the flywheel. Now, flywheel is a mechanical device which is attached to an engine. The flywheel stores energy and is able to pass on that energy to the engine to make it move faster or work faster. A flywheel in business, what it does is, it's able to increase the output or revenue of a business without increasing the inputs or the cost. Now, Prime of Amazon, the Prime Video or the Prime membership is the ultimate flywheel that is created by Amazon. It gives you lightning fast deliveries, it gives you great discounts, and it gives you wonderful content from Prime Video, which makes you stick to the platform. Naturally, if I am watching The Family Man or Mirzapur on Amazon Prime Video and sticking to that platform, definitely I will use the same Prime membership to buy goods cheaper and get it delivered faster. These two technology giants have understood that tech business has changed. Earlier, tech business was just a software and a hardware making business. Now, technology businesses have understood that the core of a company should be technology enabled to enter various sectors. They have done this using Amazon using its Prime feature to enter Prime Video, Apple using its Maps and Apple Maps navigation feature to take over the navigation markets from bigwigs like TomTom, and Apple also using its iTunes as a feature of Apple to bring in the music industry and to rule over it, literally. One good point to note in this innovation point and technology point is that Amazon understood that it is competing with FedEx. It needs to be better at delivery than FedEx. One data point that we should note here is that in the 2019 holiday season, Amazon was able to deliver 99% of its products on time, whereas FedEx was only able to deliver 95% of its products on time. And in the last 2 years, FedEx has lost 40% of its value, whereas Amazon has gained 30% of its in its value. Leadership of these two bigwigs is also important. Bezos and Jobs were both and are both visionaries. They had the charisma to woo investors and customers. They had the skill to ensure that their vision is executed. Jobs, having a great design acumen, was able to make this iPhone, which was a groundbreaking benchmark for entire mobile industry. And Bezos, by his skill, was able to understand that technology-enabled businesses are not just for software and hardware making, but also a way to enter other sectors as well. Also, these two are great storytellers. Bezos has used his skill of storytelling to make his investors reinvest their profits. By reinvesting their profits, Amazon gets a very cheap source of capital. Rather than looking outwards, they just look inwards and reinvest. And Jobs' storytelling was such that I will not make an incremental product, something better than the last. I will make a product which will revolutionize the way people look at a particular sector. An iPhone is an example. iPod is an example where it was able to completely annihilate the Sony Walkman market and bring in the iPod. Similarly, iPhone was able to do the same thing with BlackBerry, and Apple Mac initially had done this with the IBM big computers. That was all from my side. Now I will pass it to Anurag to talk about what the secret recipe of these Fagas success. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya and Jay. So as Surya and Jay told about these companies, Facebook, Amazon, Google, and Apple. So what is special in them? So we'll talk about that in this session, in my part. So what is it that they had, which the other companies or other big giants had when they were starting, like IBM, AT&T, Verizon, all these companies lagged, and where they went sideways, and these companies filled up the vacuum and went on to build their market shares and growth. So we'll talk about what is the secret sauce behind it. Is it capital? Because all these companies are flushed with capital, both in terms of revenues as well as investor dollars that are going behind them. Is it the founders? Is there something which is special with these founders, which was not present at the legacy companies or with competitors, their charisma or skill? Is it the time? Were they at the right place at the right point of time with the right team and people? Or is it something else? So there is a there are a few common traits amongst all these successful companies which contribute to them gaining this inertia and overcoming the inertia, gaining momentum, and becoming these tech behemoths where they are able to not just increase the revenues, but enter in different points of our life or their consumers' life, add on to new revenue streams. We'll talk about these common traits. So these companies are not just product builders. They are not just a software provider or a hardware builder, which is providing a solution for making something happen, but they go behind the first principles, identify what is the basic human instinct that they are targeting. They are very good at identifying human psychology and their behavior, and identifying patterns using technology to scale certain behaviors and patterns, build products around them, and scale their revenues and product lines. So, for example, Google helps us to find answers to our queries. For the basic human instinct that they target is the inquisitiveness of a person. So if anyone is looking for any answer or has any questions around health, finance, or any aspect of life, they can just go to Google, find out an answer, and that's it. So that is one of the reasons that Googling has now become a verb rather than just a product. Similarly, Walmart helps people find bargain deals for different shopping needs that they have. So they target this, that the human beings or people look for bargains or deals that are the best in the market. Similarly, Amazon, it helps curates deals and present us based on our buying pattern, buying behavior, our age, gender. It personalizes these recommendations, helps us find the deals. And not just that, it has went beyond that in providing a 1-day delivery experience or a 2-hour delivery experience in groceries, where one does not need to move out of their house, and the purchase has been made and the delivery has been made in a strict time fashion. The next thing is accelerant. So these companies are not just products, they are people, like either they are people starting from their teams and employees, their vendors whom they are buying anything from, the vendors who are providing them services, then the customers. So everything revolves around that, and all these companies have mastered this thing, that portraying it as a brand, making it an aspirational brand which people want to connect with, which people want to work at, and that acts as a springboard or a launch pad for them to create IPs that are defensible, increasing their, not just their value, but also making the moat deeper and wider in terms of defensible IPs and excellent teams that they build. And that is a trait across all these 4 companies, not just them, but also all the potential contenders and all the fast growing companies. Next is balancing growth and margins. So conventionally, it has been that these companies have broken these conventional thought processes that one needs to have a high margin or a decent margin, and the growth is secondary. These companies solely thrive on growth. They maintain, a lot of time they maintain a very healthy balance, or even survive on low margins but a high amount of growth, because they know that once they have a consumer, or they have caught someone's eyeball, or have caught someone's attention, they can not just understand them better, provide them a great experience, but also in future, once they have all these big customer base, they can also add on to multiple products. For example, what Surya told about, Amazon is not just a company that provides or caters to your shopping needs, but it also has a media and entertainment in terms of Amazon Prime, where you can watch videos, movies, TV series, listen to music, and also web services for developers to develop software products. So they are leveraging all these things to come up to cater to the customer base that they have created in multiple ways. So tapping multiple points in their entire lifetime of the customer that they get. The next is a jargon called Rundle, which is recurring revenue bundle. So the business model slowly is moving towards this subscription, subscribing for a product. For example, Netflix, instead of paying, so Netflix versus movies, I'll compare. So Netflix, you pay a subscription, say, and the cost dynamics, how it works out is that for every dollar spent, you get access to shows and TV shows, talk shows, and movies which are worth billions of dollars, which have got which involve billions of dollars spent for their production, versus a movie ticket where you spent around $10 for say a $100 million movie. So each dollar is buying you $10 million worth of invested capital in a entertainment piece, and that just for 2 hours or 3 hours. So that is the difference. So this recurring revenue, what it helps the companies is with, they have a very good insight into what, or a prediction of revenues that will be coming in, which helps them not just invest in products, not just invest in better products and continuously, but also it eases down the burden of spending a lot of amount on a single piece of product on the customer's end. And the same has been the case with Disney and a lot of places where with even physical products or app stores, the subscription models have grown quite common. The next is vertical integration. So one of the things that these companies realize is that they need to own end-to-end customer experience if they want to please these people and have a stickiness in terms of the audience. So I'll take an example of Amazon. So if one has placed an order at Amazon, it is a very very easy process, takes a few seconds or hardly a minute in from selecting from a curated product which Amazon gives you, and then paying up, giving your address. But what if the logistic company which is delivering the product delays the product a lot? It ruins the customer experience. So Amazon has slowly grown into a logistics business as well, where they can promise 1 hour delivery, 2 hour delivery, or a 1 day or 2 day delivery at max, and keep and probably beat their own timelines by delivering a product that they would have promised for in delivery in 2 days, they would deliver in a day. A lot of products get delivered the same day when they are ordered, and this helps them control the entire customer experience. Same is with Apple, Tesla, where not just the product has been designed by them, the software has also been designed by them, the hardware is designed by them, the app stores or the applications are also say owned by the app store is owned by Apple, so they can have a very tight control over what experience the customer gets. And one common thing, for example, I'll say with Tesla, the software is designed by them, the hardware is designed by them, the entire car has been designed by them. And even the one thing common with Tesla and Apple is even the sales channel are their own. So they both have their own stores rather than distributorships or someone else authorized reseller necessarily selling. They mostly have their own stores where the in-store experience is also controlled by them, like what they want the user to feel. The next is a Jargon Benjamin Button products, where the products get better as more and more people come and use the products. For a common example is Spotify. The more people that come on the product, the more music labels the company is able to sign up for because of the distribution base. And the more people come on, the more people use the product, the better the recommendation algorithms become. The company also is able to analyze the user behavior and patterns better and provide them with better new features which come up on these applications. Similar is with, for example, Airbnb, Uber, or Amazon. The more people there are, the more the other supply side comes in terms of, for example, Airbnb, the properties, in terms of Uber, the cabs. The more the user, the more the cabs. In terms of Amazon, the more the users, the more the merchants would be there. The more users on such platform, the more the ratings are there, the more curation keeps happening, and the more both supply side and demand sides keep coming, the more analytics keeps happening. They are able to harness more consumer behaviors or human behavior and develop better products and identify insights from those human behavior and what they should improve upon. The next is visionary storytelling. So this is one important thing where a lot of these companies have beaten giants like IBM, AT&T in their own games. Or in fact, for example, Apple, before Apple, IBM was a one big shot in there, and with their visionary storytelling, they were able to dominate the market, leave IBM way behind. Similarly, Airbnb has beaten up a lot of hotel chains and big real estate chains, where they do not own any piece of property, are asset light, and that also helped them fare the pandemic very well. Similarly, there are negative connotations associated with visionary storytelling. For example, with WeWork. So WeWork is a co-working space. So they provide co-working space for people to rent from just a day to a week, or as and when they please, without any long-term lease or any agreement being signed upon. So there the underlying asset was still real estate, but the company's visionary story was that it is a progressive tech company which is going to transform the entire space. Though the concept and product would still work and COVID might be a tailwind for it, but a lot of the entire visionary storytelling made it very overvalued, which later on resulted in the founder being compensated for leaving the company and investors taking the reins of the company. Similarly, the next is likability. So the likability is one of the aspect that all these companies thrive for. So they want the customer experiences to be very great, which results in more brand appeal, more brand awareness about their products. People share about their products. For example, one thing, say Airbnb, what it did during the pandemic was for all the for all the bookings, they refunded the entire amount to all the people who had booked Airbnb during when the pandemic started and the lockdown across the globe started. They refunded all the amount to the users because they realized that upsetting users would be detrimental for them. On the other hand, the property listing guys, so they were upset because they were not able to make money, which was guaranteed to them because of those bookings. So Airbnb filled that gap with money from their own pocket, because they realized that the demand side is as important as the supply side, and they don't want to ruin the experience. Pandemic would go away, but they are there to stay. So they improvise. They for time being, they spent money from their own pockets to compensate these property listers. And yeah, so that is how like they build their and other companies as well. That is how they build that likability amongst different stakeholders. The next is the other contenders that are there in this space, which are upcoming or following these traits, or maybe the next bigs. For example, Peloton, it is just an exercise bike which has convinced people to pay a subscription, has $1 billion plus revenue. Shopify, how it is different from Amazon is that it does not harness any data from the merchant or the buyer side to come up with their own products, which Amazon does. That they identify products that sell a lot, they come up with their own private labels or help other customers to use that insight and data to outperform other merchants. So Shopify does not do that, and that is where they stand apart. Robinhood, it makes possible for anyone with any amount of investment to come up and be a participant in the capital markets, buy shares. Maybe they also introduced the concept of commission-free trading and fractional investment, which was appealing to a lot of people. Netflix, it is slowly getting into not just into production, but also into vying for looking at companies which are in the music space and all, doing a vertical integration in the entire entertainment space. So it would be interesting to see what's next with Netflix. And then there is an interesting case of Warby Parker, where they have beaten the incumbents in developing a direct-to-consumer approach, which is working out in their favor, which the incumbents are now slowly catching up with. So these are some of the contenders, and these are some of the learnings that a lot of startups, even in India or any geography, can look up at. So I'll pass it on to Surya for the closing comments now.
Thank you, Anurag and Jayavardhan. It was definitely insightful to look at the secret sauce behind Faga's success. And given that Indian startups are now becoming unicorn on a daily and a weekly basis, and India has become a startup hub of the world, I wish that more and more startups follow this model of Faga and are able to encapsulate these 8 parameters and involve it in their business models. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. PB&J will keep bringing you such amazing content on a weekly basis. Stay tuned for more such content. Thank you.